we are asking for votes for November, but this is much bigger than that. This is about building and connecting so that we can actually deliver change in office. And that is a different type of approach and a different campaign that you run to do that.
Mm-hmm. And again, we are on the line with Michelle Wu, mayoral candidate, maybe Boston's next mayor. And that was the question on how do you plan to win the Black vote, knowing that approximately 40% of the vote went to Andrea Cambro and acting mayor Janey. And Michelle just said she's gonna do what she can to earn that vote. One of the things that we are seeing is that we have two candidates that are both married to real estate investors / developers. And with housing crisis being the number one issue in the city of Boston, how do you handle that question? Like, as mayor, is your husband going to get all of these new developments? As mayor, are you going to advocate, and is there going to be nepotism? And we've seen in a recent article that came out that Anissa's office blocked or maybe not blocked, but went to a hearing and was against a development because it didn't favor her husband's development. Is that something that we can see out of the Wu? Is that something that we should project? We're antsy, we're wary. Real estate is in short supply. Nepotism has been going on for years in the city of Boston, and so we're really just concerned.
No, absolutely, as everyone should be, and now is the time to make sure that all the questions get asked during the campaign so that there is full accountability and transparency. So I guess I want to start just by saying that, this is a really amazing time in the history of Boston where we started in this race with 4 badass women of color who put in the work, who know our communities, running and ended up being the top 4 finishers in this race. And as moms running, as women in this space, we stand on our own records and we stand on our own vision and experience. Of course, family conversations and sort of how you fit into that family structure are totally, that is our responsibility to be transparent about what our obligations are and how we think about different industries in Boston, what our own financial interests might be. But I want to be clear, on my side, my husband is not a real estate investor. We own one home that my kids and I and husband live in upstairs, and my mom lives downstairs. He is in banking. He works at a bank, but he's definitely not someone who is using money to invest in and choose, which projects go where or anything like that. So at least in my case, we're not tied at all to development decisions that happen financially. And so I want to be very clear about that. We don't own any rental units or anything. But again, I think the conversation should be on what our track record as individual people in government have been and where we're headed, what that vision looks like.
Mm-hmm. The BRA. And so you speak often about the BRA and decisions that were made in the beginning of your freshman year as a counselor. Dismantling the BRA, because I don't care how many times they shoot up the club and change the name, it will always be the BRA. What does that dismantlement look like? And what does the city lots that are currently being RFP'd look like in the future?
Yeah, so the key problem in Boston is that we basically have no rules of the household, right? Everybody is welcome to ask for what they want to build, wherever they want to build it, and then they go through a process of trying to meet with the right groups to get their blessing and then eventually get the sign-off from City Hall, whether it's through the BPDA or through the Zoning Board of Appeals. And that's never going to be a system where there's clarity and transparency about what's happening. And it's also never going to be a system where everything fits together with how the city grows, because it is just so it's chaos. It's a mishmash of depending on who asks and who that person knows, you get a different answer. And so the zoning code and the rules of how our neighborhoods grow is really one of the most important powers and responsibilities of city government. The way that the BPDA is, or the BRA is structured, it is very hard for us to change that. So we need to change the organization in order to get to rules that actually make sense so that everybody can be on the same page. Right now, development and planning are squished entirely together. And that means we don't really do planning. We end up just making case-by-case decisions. We need to separate those two, like most cities do, and to have accountability and direct democratic oversight over what happens on both ends of that.
Thank you. What does education look like under a Michelle Wu cabinet?
Education is the bread and butter of where our city's future is. For me, it's a super personal issue. You know, I talk a lot about my boys who are both currently in BPS. Thank goodness. We've been having a tough time with the little one, adjusting to starting in pre-K, but he got there this morning. And I'd also raised my sister through BPS, so I've seen kind of middle school and high school that way, and then now starting from pre-K and first grade. Our schools are trying to address everything else that's happening in our young people's lives, but without the supports to do it. And so number one for me is having a children's cabinet, which would pull together every single city department that has something to offer our families. Bring in the Office of Housing Stability. Bring in the technology office that can help close the digital divide and make sure people have reliable Wi-Fi access. Bring in the Office of Immigrant Advancement and youth employment and engagement, because when we send families through all these hoops to get what they need, then people end up falling through the cracks, and we can do a lot better to make schools the platform for all of that. We also need to close the gap for early education, universal pre-K. We need to rebuild our schools. The buildings are crumbling in so many cases. And we need to make sure that vocational education is valued, is invested in. Madison Park should be the jewel of our district.
Thank you. Michelle, how much more time do we have?
Hold on, let me double check. I have until 11.
Oh, awesome. Okay, great. As far as, so one of the things that people feel is you have been in community and you can show up everywhere. Like we've seen you in Mattapan, we've seen you in Roxbury, like we've seen you in West Roxbury, Chinatown. So you have no problem showing up everywhere. The question is whether or not once you become mayor, if we'll ever see you again.
I mean, I that is a very real fear, right? And in some ways, I have been through this understanding before. It's a learning curve to be in government, and it's not the same. It's not the exact same as running for office, because you actually gotta do what you say on the campaign trail once you're in there. And I remember running for office the first time for city council. When you're just a candidate and you're not serving, you can be everywhere, listening to everyone, showing up, making sure that you're connected to community. But what I learned in my first term on the council is that you have to save time also when you're in there to actually do the work. Otherwise, you're just running around, like a chicken with their head cut off and not actually doing the follow-up. So there is some adjustment period, but I think I've been in office for 8 years now. I hope everyone has a good sense of how I bring together doing the work and being in community, and most of all, that I see it as one and the same, that you can't know what the best way is to make change unless you're hearing it directly from community out in the neighborhoods and in our streets. Mm-hmm. So that is my commitment. It will not, compared to a campaign, as we're getting staffed up, as we're getting everything set, there will be some transitions, but I do not ever believe that you can even do a good job. You're here to community and people who are impacted.
Mm-hmm. As far as community impact is concerned, how do you plan on implementing community voice into politics or into your office. And I say that in the sense of like, for an example, I have an idea and I come to you with this idea and you're like, oh, Tayla, that's a really good idea. How do we then implement that? Because it's one thing to say, oh, that's a good idea. It makes common sense, but we just have to wait for, like there's too many moving pieces to that. How do you, in a community, for the most part, has we have the answers. The PhDs, the masters. No, they don't have the answers outside of the lived experiences. And so how do you plan, if at all, to implement community voice into process?
Yeah, so, okay, two pieces to that. One is that it is not about, what I was going to say is that it is not about the mayor. Of course, having a person who is accountable is important. But this is about the team of people around the mayor, the team of people who are in city government across all parts of that structure. Because I could mean very well and say, yes, I want to do this. And then there's just so many different things happening all at the same time. Unless there's someone who is trustworthy, committed, knows the community to pass that to and to connect it, to tag in and to say, okay, now this is actually going to happen because there's someone who can spend their time putting it onto their list and following through with it. That is different from an approach where one person is just everywhere and then, sort of overflowing with things that are on a list. So having that team that's reflective of, representative of, and always out and present in the community is the baseline. And then the other thing is just making sure that the structures and the processes are built in, right? As a mom, Tayla,
I literally have a 3-year-old riding a bike right now. I think you can hear him in the background.
Exactly. So when there's a lot going on, unless you're really intentional about saying, okay, every Thursday is going to be date night, or like every, once a month we're going to set aside to go do this special thing. If you're not holding it off proactively ahead of time, something's going to come up with whatever the kids need in this. And it's the same thing for the city too. We need to build in the ways so that there's always a chance for people to make sure that there's a space to be plugged in and to give feedback and then see follow-up. So whether that looks like monthly, having, for example, with the school committee. Right now, the only way people can even have any say is you show up to a meeting that's on Wednesday nights. You wait until sometimes 11 p.m., midnight, 1 a.m., give 2 minutes of testimony, and that's that. That's no way to make sure that we're actually following through on what people are hearing. So requiring instead, monthly listening sessions out in the neighborhoods, in addition to the regular school committee meetings, or, the equivalent of that for different departments or different issues. That's how we make sure that there's always space for people to be able to reach their decision makers. Yesterday, I was on the City Hall Plaza and met a gentleman who was from Birmingham, Alabama, and he said that he had born in Boston, had been away for 20 years, and was now back and had come to City Hall to try to meet with the mayor because where, in different government spaces that he had been in before, there was just a guarantee that, one day a month or whatever it was, there would be time for anyone who wanted to bring up an issue to have FaceTime and to get to speak directly. That's what we need. You can get really holed up, separated, and sort of just stuck hearing from in this echo chamber if there's not a way for people regularly to be connected and out in the community.
Mm-hmm. Is that similar? Like, was he in reference to like a coffee hour type thing?
I've seen it different ways in different cities, actually. Sometimes there's just, office hours, or you can sign up for certain slots, or there's different ways to do it. But a couple of years ago on the council, in a similar way, we had, I filed an ordinance. Actually, the idea had come from Jamal Crawford, of the right to petition, that anyone should be able, if you could collect a certain number of signatures to show people cared about an issue, then you could directly put something on the agenda of the Boston City Council. So a lot of cities in Massachusetts have that, and unfortunately we didn't get enough votes to pass it then. but it's a similar idea of we need to, of course, respect the leaders in our community, but we can't have gatekeepers to our residents, and so there needs to be direct access to.
Okay. Mass and Cass, Anari and I, my eldest son, went for a drive last night, and Michelle, I thought Mass and Cass was over. I was ignorant to it just moved a street over, and it is 10 times worse than what it was before. We literally have a New York style, a California style tent city. Okay, it's okay. Go sit. Can you say hi, Michelle?
Hi, baby. Hi.
Okay, I'm talking to Michelle. Can you please go sit down on the couch and watch Coco Melon? Okay, not right now. So what about Mass and Cass? Like what? And I just say Mass and Cass because that's what people. Yes, because that's what people know it as. But the abundance of people that are living in tents in that area. I don't live too far. My car has been broken into multiple times. And it's problematic as far as the needles everywhere. As you know, as far as into the inner city of Roxbury, Dorchester. So what is I know it's not an easy solution. You just don't walk in on day one and have everything figured out. But what does that process look like?
Yeah, I mean, first is just really making sure that there's accountability. The structures that we have now there, where city government is involved, we're plugged in from 5 different angles, whether it's public works, trying to think about keeping the streets clean, or public health commission, doing outreach, or the Office of Housing Stability, or the police department has been involved in some places. And so really having a stream, like a point of accountability and coordination is important, especially when there are so many other partners involved. Sheriff Steve Tompkins and his offices are right in the area as well. There are businesses there. There are other organizations that can provide resources and coordinate if there was a plan and convening. And I also just want to emphasize that this is really a citywide issue, right? We were seeing it as concentrated in one part because the approach has been, if we just put everything in one place, then at least it's not impacting other neighborhoods. But we haven't been addressing the patients and people who are in need of help, as well as all the impacts of trauma in that area. So I would expand treatment through our community health center so that we're not just keeping everything in one small place in the city, and then also ensure that we are tackling the underlying housing crisis. We have city-owned buildings and properties that can be used to help support people who are willing and want to seek treatment or get off the streets. And so between those two items of quickly moving with our partners to expand treatment, and then quickly ensuring that we are moving for supportive housing, we need to just decide that we're going to use our resources in a way that actually makes a difference. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. You know, and that was a lot, and to unpack that could take a while. I know we're coming up on your time limit, and so I do want to be respectful of your time and ask. One of the things that we saw with, and I'm speaking out of experience, out of Mayor Walsh's administration, is that Marty met with Black media once a year, and it happened once during his term. What does press look like under your administration?
Yeah, this is, I think, again, as someone who ran for office with absolutely no political experience, no connections, I was terrified of the media for a very long time, right? You feel like it's, maybe people trying to get, put you in gotcha situations or this and that. But then once you realize when you're in there that you're working so hard, you're trying to do all these things, you're trying to show up and make change and make things happen. And then when you're back out in the community, no one knows what you were doing unless it was communicated in some way. And we do that through social media. We do that directly through constituent outreach. But the media is such a valuable partner in that. And it's important to accept the accountability that comes with that, but also how important it is for people to have that information. So when I was council president, we did a weekly briefing for all media with focus on the community outlets, either neighborhood newspapers or community blogs and radio shows, just to make sure that there was weekly access so people get an update on what was happening and then ask whatever questions. So that has been my approach. I will take the slight fear of what might happen, but because if you're prepared, if you can give a good explanation for what you've been doing, there's nothing to be afraid of. But more importantly, keeping people updated, not just once a year at election time, but week to week as it's happening is really valuable. That's the only way to drive up voter turnout in the long run, is to make sure people know what's happening when it's not election time.
And so with us coming to the top of the hour, is there anything else that you want to add, speaking to the potential voters, and specifically because we are a Caribbean station, speaking to Black people?
Yeah, this is a moment for all of Boston to make sure that we are meeting the moment. And this moment especially is about centering Black and brown communities, as we have seen the pandemic really exacerbate and expose what all our communities were going through before COVID-19. When it comes to building wealth in our communities, when it comes to connecting people to health and stability and housing and schools. I'm a mom first and foremost. I'm the daughter of immigrants, and I will fight to make sure that above all else, everyone's voices are included in that conversation, because as we were talking about earlier, this is where the expertise is. That is where the solutions are. That is where the work is already happening. And so my goal is to get City Hall out of City Hall into the neighborhoods so that we are all a part of shaping our future.
Thank you so much. I am TaylaAndre. That was Michelle Wu. Make sure you tune in to all of what's going on in the next 7 weeks. Make sure you ask the questions that are important to you, because she will be showing up. And so if there was questions that you have that I did not ask, make sure you show up to the different spaces and places that she will be to get your questions answered, so you can find out if she's the candidate for you, because she is the candidate for me. And so, Michelle, I thank you so much. We love you and we appreciate you, and we hope to have you back soon.
Thanks, Tayla. Have a great day.